You ever notice how we give the loudest parts of ourselves to people who don't always handle us with care? We overthink a text, we replay a conversation, we feel that sting in our chest when they pull away even just a little, and then we carry that weight quietly, like it's normal, like it's love. But truth is, when you're always reacting, always adjusting, always explaining, you're not in love, you're in survival. And I get it. I've been there too. That silent tug of war inside where your peace is fighting for space and your heart just wants to feel safe. Training yourself to be unbothered isn't about being cold or distant. It's about reclaiming your balance. It's learning to sit in your own calm, even when someone else's chaos tries to pull you in. That's not detachment. That's growth. That's emotional maturity. And it's the kind of strength no one can take from you. Most people don't talk about how exhausting love can feel when you're always the one holding the emotional weight. When you care deeply, you start noticing everything, every shift in tone, every delayed response, every moment that feels just a little off. And without realizing it, you begin walking on eggshells around someone you're supposed to feel safe with. That's where the confusion creeps in. You're not sure if it's you being too sensitive or them being careless with your heart. That constant push and pull can wear you down, make you second guess your worth, and leave you feeling emotionally drained. This conversation isn't about blaming or pointing fingers. It's about giving you back your grounding. It's about learning how to stand firm in love without losing yourself in the process. Because being unbothered isn't shutting down. It's knowing who you are, even when someone else can't see it. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels punishing. You know the one. It's not just someone needing space or taking a moment to process. It's the kind of quiet that's cold, sharp, and calculated. You feel it in the room, in the way they avoid your eyes, in how they walk past you like you're not even there. And no one has to say anything out loud for you to know something's wrong. You feel the shutdown like a wall going up. Suddenly, you're on the outside of something you didn't even know you were locked out of. And what makes this even more confusing is that you start blaming yourself. Did I say too much? Should I have handled that differently? You replay the last conversation, comb through your words, trying to find the exact moment things shifted. That's what emotional punishment does. It makes you question your reality. It's not loud. It's subtle, but it's powerful enough to change how safe you feel in the relationship. The truth is, silence used in this way becomes a form of control. It's not a break for clarity. It's a power move. It's how some people protect their ego instead of working through the hard parts. Because vulnerability feels threatening. Accountability feels uncomfortable. So instead of leaning in, they pull away. And in that space, they leave you alone with all the emotional weight. It creates an imbalance where one person gets to hold the power while the other holds all the confusion. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. You are allowed to name that behavior for what it is. You are allowed to say, this doesn't feel respectful. This doesn't feel safe. Because love isn't supposed to leave you in the dark, guessing how someone feels about you, or if you're even wanted in the room anymore. A relationship that requires you to chase down emotional clarity isn't a relationship rooted in trust. It's survival mode dressed up as love. Now, let's flip the lens. Maybe you're the one who shuts down. Maybe silence feels safer than saying something you'll regret. Maybe you've learned to retreat when things get tense, because that's how you were taught to cope. If that's you, I want to speak to you gently. Taking space is okay. But silence that punishes, isolates, or manipulates, that's not space, that's avoidance. And avoidance doesn't build connection. It builds resentment. You can protect your peace and stay present. You can take a breath without pushing someone away. Being unbothered in love doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you stop allowing behavior that chips away at your emotional safety to go unchecked. It means you hold space for real communication, not just silence that holds someone hostage. When silence is used to punish, the message isn't, I need time. The message becomes, you don't matter right now. And that's not something we should ever grow comfortable with. You deserve connection that's clear, not confusing. Love that speaks, even when it's hard. And respect that shows up, even in silence. There's a quiet ache that comes from loving someone who doesn't reassure you. You're showing up, giving, being present, but still wondering if you're truly seen. And it's not that they don't care. It's that they don't say it. They don't show it in the way your heart needs. They assume you just know, just feel it. But the truth is, even the strongest hearts need reminders. Even the most confident people need to hear, I'm here. I choose you. I see you. When that's missing, it creates a slow kind of doubt. Not loud enough to break the relationship, but just strong enough to make you question it every day. So what ends up happening is you carry both roles. You're the one checking in. You're the one filling the silence. You're the one reaching out, making sure things are okay. And somewhere along the line, you start to feel like you're doing the emotional heavy lifting. You're pouring into someone who's keeping their cup hidden. Not empty, just guarded. And that's exhausting, especially when your love language is words or presence or simple affirmations that you matter. Now, let's be real. People love differently. Some weren't raised in homes where feelings were spoken. Some don't even know how to name their emotions, much less express them to someone else. And if you love someone like that, it's easy to think they don't care because they don't say the things you need. But a lack of reassurance doesn't always come from a lack of love. Sometimes it comes from fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of doing it wrong, or sometimes they simply don't realize the depth of what their silence creates in you. But here's where clarity matters. Unspoken love doesn't always feel like love, and you're not weak or needy for needing reassurance. You're human. Reassurance isn't begging. It's not insecurity. It's emotional maintenance. It's what keeps a relationship from falling into autopilot. Because even if they love you, if they never show it in a way that lands, the relationship starts to feel distant, even while standing side by side. So let's shift from blame to boundaries. If you're in this space right now, it's okay to voice what you need without shame. I need more reassurance doesn't mean you're not enough. It means I want to feel safe with you. I want to stop guessing. That's a request for connection, not control. And if they can't meet you there, can't even try. That tells you something too. Love without effort turns into loneliness real quick. If you're on the other side of this, if you're the one who struggles to give reassurance, I want you to hear this. You don't have to be poetic or perfect. Just be present. A hand on the shoulder, a simple, I'm proud of you, a check and text. It doesn't take a lot to close the gap, but it does take intention. And when you start showing up that way, you'll see how much stability it brings, not just to them, but to the relationship itself. Because love is not just what you feel. It's what you repeat, what you choose to show even when it's uncomfortable. Reassurance isn't extra. It's essential. Being the bigger person sounds good in theory, like a badge of honor. But over time, it starts to feel like a weight you didn't sign up to carry. You're the one who lets things go first, the one who apologizes even when you're not the one who started it, the one who smooths the edges of every argument so things don't spiral out of control. And maybe you've gotten good at it. Really good. You know how to keep the peace, how to bite your tongue, how to say, it's fine, when it's not. But just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's fair. Just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should have to. There's a certain kind of quiet resentment that grows in relationships like that. It doesn't show up all at once. It builds in layers. One small offense here, one dismissive comment there, a forgotten birthday, an apology that never comes. And each time you tell yourself, it's not worth the fight, I'll just let it go. You become so used to absorbing tension that you forget how to ask for repair. And somewhere in the middle of that cycle, the relationship stops feeling mutual. It starts feeling like emotional labor you're doing on your own. And here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you're always the one being the bigger person, the relationship stops being about two people learning and growing together. It becomes about one person managing the emotional environment while the other stays comfortable and unchallenged. That dynamic might keep things calm on the surface, but underneath, it's unbalanced. And what's unbalanced will eventually break. Now, let me be clear. Choosing to be the bigger person isn't wrong. There's strength in taking the high road. There's maturity in knowing when to de-escalate, when to lead with grace. But if you're constantly the one who has to bend, that's not peacekeeping. That's people-pleasing in disguise. And it'll wear your soul thin. Because love without reciprocity isn't love. It's emotional labor. And no one can carry that weight forever. So ask yourself this, do you feel emotionally safe in this relationship or just emotionally responsible? Are you walking on eggshells or actually building something healthy together? Being in a relationship where you always have to manage your partner's reactions, moods, or ego isn't a sign of your strength. It's a sign of the relationship's imbalance. And awareness is the first step to shifting that. You can still be kind, still be wise, and still have boundaries. You can love someone deeply and still say, this isn't working for me. You're allowed to ask for mutual effort. You're allowed to stop carrying both sides of the relationship because a healthy love doesn't require one person to shrink so the other can stay comfortable. It requires both people to grow, even when it's hard, even when it's messy, even when it means looking in the mirror and doing the work. Being the bigger person is admirable, but being the only person trying, That's not sustainable. You deserve a relationship where being the bigger person is a choice, not a survival strategy. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly having to explain how you feel. It's not just about the words. It's about the emotional labor behind them. You're trying to be clear, trying to be calm, trying to communicate without triggering defensiveness. But no matter how many times you say it, it doesn't seem to land. And after a while, you stop feeling heard. You start feeling like a broken record, repeating the same needs, the same hurts, the same hopes, only to be met with confusion, dismissal, or worse, silence. It wears on you. Because explaining how you feel shouldn't feel like a full-time job. You shouldn't have to turn your pain into a PowerPoint just to be taken seriously. When someone really cares, they don't just listen to your words. They listen to your heart behind them. They lean in. They ask questions. They remember. But when that doesn't happen, you start shrinking. You start thinking, maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe this is just who they are. Maybe it's easier to stay quiet. And that right there, that's where the disconnect starts growing. In a healthy relationship, emotional understanding isn't something you have to beg for. It's something you build together. But if you're constantly the one doing the explaining, the educating, the initiating, there's an imbalance. One person is doing the work of both partners. And over time, that creates emotional distance, not because you stopped caring, but because you got tired of carrying the whole weight of the conversation. Now, let's be fair. Some people struggle with emotional language. They weren't raised in homes where feelings were named or explored. They may genuinely not know how to respond to emotions that aren't their own, but that doesn't give them a free pass to stay emotionally unavailable. Growth in a relationship means saying, I may not understand it yet, but I'm willing to learn. It means meeting your partner halfway, not waiting for them to drag you across the line. If you're in a place where you're tired of explaining how you feel, I want you to know. You're not difficult, dramatic. You're emotionally aware. You're tuned in, and that's a strength, not a weakness. But even strength has limits. You shouldn't have to spend all your energy trying to be understood by someone who's not even trying to understand you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing, not out of spite, but out of clarity, out of a deep knowing that your peace matters too, that your emotional needs aren't optional, that explaining yourself over and over isn't connection. It's a signal that something's off. And if that person values the relationship, they'll notice the shift. They'll feel the absence of your voice and realize what they've taken for granted. You deserve to be with someone who listens the first time, not just to avoid conflict, but because they care. Someone who doesn't make you fight for understanding every time you open your heart. Because when love is healthy, communication doesn't feel like a battle. It feels like a bridge. There's a moment in every relationship, friendship, marriage, family, where someone says or does something that hits that nerve. You feel it instantly. Your body tightens, your tone sharpens, your mind starts to race. You're not just reacting to what they said. You're reacting to everything it touched underneath. Old wounds, unspoken tension, the need to defend yourself before you're misunderstood again. And the hardest part, it often comes from someone you care about. Someone who knows you well enough to go deep, whether they mean to or not. That's what makes it hurt. That's what makes it feel personal. Staying calm in those moments doesn't mean you don't feel it. It means you choose not to let it run the room. And that's hard, especially when you've spent years being triggered in similar ways. Maybe they roll their eyes and suddenly you feel dismissed like you did growing up. Maybe they raise their voice and you freeze up because conflict has never felt safe for you. That's the thing about buttons. They're usually connected to something old. And the more unaware we are of them, the more control they have over us. But here's the shift. When you can notice the button being pushed without pressing back, you take back your power. That pause, that breath before you react, that's where calm lives, not in pretending you're unaffected, not in bottling it up until it explodes later, but in owning your space, saying to yourself, I feel the heat, but I don't have to add fire. Now let's be honest. Some people push your buttons not out of cruelty, but out of habit. They don't even know they're doing it. It's how they argue, how they protect themselves. But others, they do know. They use your triggers as leverage in the middle of a fight. And when you respond with big emotion, they get to step back and say, see, you're the problem. That cycle leaves you drained, ashamed, and often apologizing for reacting to something they never should have said in the first place. This is why staying calm isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's emotional clarity. It's choosing to be rooted even when you're rattled. And it doesn't mean you ignore the issue. It means you deal with it from a place of strength, not reactivity. It's saying, That crossed the line. Let's talk about it. Instead of yelling back just to be heard, you get to set the tone, even if the other person is chaotic. You get to hold your peace without surrendering your voice. That's what emotional maturity looks like. And trust me, it's not easy. But it is powerful because nothing diffuses manipulation faster than calm. Nothing shuts down button pushing faster than someone who refuses to hand over the remote. So when they push your buttons, breathe. Notice what it stirs in you. Speak clearly or walk away if you need to. But don't let someone else's chaos decide your character. The goal isn't to be numb, it's to be stable. That's the kind of calm that keeps relationships real and keeps you grounded in the middle of it all. There comes a point in some relationships where you realize you're too close to the chaos. Every mood shift, every sharp word, every unmet need starts to take a toll. You start absorbing emotions that aren't yours to carry. You lose sleep over things you can't control. And slowly, without even noticing, your peace starts depending on their behavior. That's when detachment becomes necessary, not as a punishment, not to hurt the other person, but to protect your own emotional stability, to take a step back so you can see clearly again. But here's the struggle. How do you detach without becoming cold, without shutting down, going numb, or building a wall so high that even you can't get back in because you still care, you still love them? You just can't keep losing yourself in their storm. And that tension of needing space while still holding compassion, that's one of the hardest balances to strike in any relationship. The key is this: detachment isn't about withdrawal. It's about boundaries. It's saying, I can care about you and still care about me. It's choosing to show up differently, not disappear completely. You're not rejecting them. You're refusing to carry what isn't yours anymore. That's not cold. That's clarity. That's maturity. People often confuse emotional detachment with emotional distance, but they're not the same. Coldness says, I don't feel anything for you anymore. Detachment says, I'm choosing not to react from emotion anymore. There's still care, still empathy, but now there's space to breathe. And sometimes that space is exactly what the relationship needs. Because when you stop over-functioning, it invites the other person to step up or reveals that they won't. This happens a lot in dynamics where one person is always trying to fix things, always trying to read the room, always managing both sides of the connection. And when that person starts detaching, really detaching, it feels like a shock to the system. The other person might call you distant, cold, even selfish. Not because you've changed, but because they've lost access to the version of you that overextended. And that's okay. You don't have to convince anyone that your peace matters. You don't have to apologize for drawing a line between what you feel and what you're responsible for. In fact, the most loving thing you can do for them and for you is to stop enabling patterns that hurt both of you. So how do you stay warm while detaching? You check in with yourself first. You lead with calm. You let your no be clear but kind. You offer honesty without sharp edges. And you remind yourself, I can love them and still let go of what isn't mine to hold. You don't have to become cold to become clear. You don't have to harden your heart to soften your grip. This isn't about becoming distant. It's about becoming rooted. So that no matter what someone else does or doesn't do, you're not shaken. You're steady. That's not detachment out of defense. That's detachment out of self-respect. And it's one of the strongest forms of love you'll ever practice. There's a kind of loneliness that hits different when it shows up inside a relationship. It's not just the absence of company. It's the absence of connection. You're sharing the same space, maybe even the same bed, but emotionally, it feels like you're in two separate worlds. And that can be the hardest part, because it's not the loud arguments or the obvious breakdowns that hurt the most. It's the quiet, the subtle drift, the way your voice seems to echo when you speak, the way you start filtering your thoughts before you even share them, because you already know they won't land the way you need them to. You begin to notice you feel lighter when you're with friends or even by yourself. Conversations outside the relationship feel easier, more natural. You laugh more. You breathe deeper. And then you come back home or back into that dynamic and the tension returns. Not always because something was said, but because of everything that hasn't been said. It's the buildup of disconnect, the accumulation of small, ignored moments. And slowly, that feeling grows. I'm more alone here than I am anywhere else. And that realization doesn't come all at once. It usually creeps in over time. You start to feel like you're the only one trying, the only one bringing up issues, the only one asking, are we okay? And when that question is met with defensiveness or indifference, it starts to sting in a deeper way. Because you're not just lonely, you're lonely with someone, and that's a pain that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. Here's what's important to name. Loneliness in a relationship isn't always about physical distance. It's about emotional unavailability. It's about presence that feels passive. When your partner stops checking in, not just with what you're doing, but how you're feeling, that's when the isolation sets in. That's when you begin to carry the weight of us all on your own. But before we point fingers, it's worth pausing and checking in with ourselves too. Have we made space for hard conversations? Have we voiced the depth of our loneliness, not just hinted at it through frustration or sarcasm? Have we given our partner a chance to meet us there? Because sometimes we go silent first. We stop trying because it hurts to try and still feel unseen. But healing doesn't start with blame. It starts with honesty. And if you've been honest, if you've tried and tried again, and you're still sitting in silence, it might be time to stop chasing connection and start protecting your peace. You don't have to stay in a space that depletes you just because it once felt like home. You deserve mutual effort. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve to feel known, not just tolerated. Love should not feel lonelier than solitude. The right relationship isn't the one that just fills the room. It's the one that fills your heart. And if you're not getting that right now, it's okay to name it. It's okay to need more. And it's okay to ask not just, are we okay, but am I okay in this? Because how you feel matters. And you don't have to be alone with that anymore. There's a kind of loneliness that hits different when it shows up inside a relationship. It's not just the absence of company. It's the absence of connection. You're sharing the same space, maybe even the same bed, but emotionally, it feels like you're in two separate worlds. And that can be the hardest part because it's not the loud arguments or the obvious breakdowns that hurt the most. It's the quiet, the subtle drift, the way your voice seems to echo when you speak, the way you start filtering your thoughts before you even share them because you already know they won't land the way you need them to. You begin to notice you feel lighter when you're with friends or even by yourself. Conversations outside the relationship feel easier, more natural. You laugh more, you breathe deeper, and then you come back home or back into that dynamic and the tension returns. Not always because something was said, but because of everything that hasn't been said. It's the build up of disconnect, the accumulation of small, ignored moments. And slowly, that feeling grows. I'm more alone here than I am anywhere else. That realization doesn't come all at once. It usually creeps in over time. You start to feel like you're the only one trying, the only one bringing up issues, the only one asking, are we okay? And when that question is met with defensiveness or indifference, it starts to sting in a deeper way because you're not just lonely, you're lonely with someone. And that's a pain that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. Here's what's important to name. Loneliness in a relationship isn't always about physical distance. It's about emotional unavailability. It's about presence that feels passive. When your partner stops checking in, not just with what you're doing, but how you're feeling, that's when the isolation sets in. That's when you begin to carry the weight of all on your own. But before we point fingers, it's worth pausing and checking in with ourselves too. Have we made space for hard conversations? Have we voiced the depth of our loneliness, not just hinted at it through frustration or sarcasm? Have we given our partner a chance to meet us there? Because sometimes we go silent first. We stop trying because it hurts to try and still feel unseen. But healing doesn't start with blame, it starts with honesty. And if you've been honest, if you've tried and tried again, and you're still sitting in silence, it might be time to stop chasing connection and start protecting your peace. You don't have to stay in a space that depletes you just because it once felt like home. You deserve mutual effort. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve to feel known, not just tolerated. Love should not feel lonelier than solitude. The right relationship isn't the one that just fills the room. It's the one that fills your heart. And if you're not getting that right now, it's okay to name it. It's okay to need more. And it's okay to ask, not just are we okay, but am I okay in this? Because how you feel matters. And you don't have to be alone with that anymore.